Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I know there are many, many podcasts you could choose from, so that you choose us is not a small thing. Thank you. Thanks for the 5-star reviews. Thanks, as always, for your written reviews at Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I want to tell you about my friend in Cincinnati named John Ruhlman. Now, he runs a company called U.S. Medical Plan. And John has been a sponsor of mine and a friend of mine for a long while. And he has gotten calls from this audience, including calls from my own family, calls from colleagues and friends of mine who have shopped with him their current health insurance plan. And he has saved friends and family thousands of dollars, literally. Let me give you for example. I have a friend who bought private health insurance for his family. His daughter had some special health needs that cost him quite a bit of money a month to get premiums covered for all of them. John found him identical coverage and saved him $2,000 a month. That's jaw-dropping money. My parents called John for a supplemental health insurance plan for their Medicare. John saved them $400 a month. Now, every nickel is precious, particularly when you're sitting on an income that you've got to count on for the rest of your days and you're counting your change. $400 is a lot of money. All right, so that's what John can do for you. Or maybe if you have no health insurance at all and you think it's too expensive, I can't afford it right now. He has over 100 different private health insurance companies all over the country that he shops and compares so that he gets you the best rates and never cheats you on coverage, by the way. It doesn't mean it's some scant coverage. Great rates, great coverage. Let John and his team at usmedicalplan.com go to work for you today. You can also call 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. You know what I love is it's undeniable that even when the guy is out there swinging a golf club, he's getting more done in the course of a day than most presidents get done in a week or a month or even a year. Hey, good morning, folks. How are you? Good to be back with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. I appreciate Mark Davis sitting in yesterday while I was away, taking a little, this was sort of a delayed 25th anniversary trip for my wife and me. So we were doing a little resting and retreating out there and had a great time. So I appreciate Mark for sitting in while we did so. But good to be back with you. And even over the weekend, as I was keeping a sharp eye on his trip to Scotland, where he's opening a new course, mixing a little business and a little pleasure. He just this morning, as of 6 o'clock Eastern, a little before, because it was 5 o'clock in the 5 o'clock hour Eastern this morning, holding a little impromptu press conference, crowing about his EU deal, talking a little Putin, and then opening the golf course too. Going to get out there and play around and then hop the plane home. I've never played in Scotland, incidentally. I think this is like his fourth course, and he said that the only reason this particular one got built is the late, great Sean Connery said, let the bloody bloke open his golf course, or some such thing. I guess they were friends, him and Sean Connery. And he says that today, the whole reason the course can open is because of Sean Connery. Eddie, have you been to Scotland? You ever played over there? People that love to golf, and I like to play. I'm not, it's like church for people that golf, to go over to Scotland and the UK and play, right?
Yeah, of course it is. Sadly, I have not been, man. I have not been.
Yeah. What do you hear is the biggest difference in playing there versus here? Or have you heard? The wind is one thing I hear is relentless there.
Yeah, no, for sure the wind, and also it's weird because it could appear, like, yes, you see a lot of rolling hills and things like that, but it could appear to be flat, right? But once you start walking on the course, it's very ridgy, very bumpy. It's very strange. It's almost like a trick of the eye.
I wonder what a round of golf on this new course costs out there. Can you stay? Can you stay out there, or do you? I have no idea. I got to look it up. I've never played a guy. Well, that's not true. I played Trump's course in Jersey once, and it was a butt kicker. I will just tell you, I had no business. I mean, I'm a hack. I like to play, but I belong on par threes, municipal par threes at best. I have no business being on a course like Trump's. The guy, He's a darn good. A lot of people don't believe that he actually plays well until you see some shots of his. I sent my son a shot of his the other day on a par 3 that, it was like a dart about a foot from the hole. And I told my son, the guy can actually hit. I think it was Bryson DeChambeau he was playing with or somebody, and he was actually bowled over how good he was. It's a real deal. Anyway, it's just he's having fun, and at the same time, he's kicking butt. President Trump averaging one peace deal or ceasefire a month. This from Breitbart. He's brokered on average about one peace deal or ceasefire per month thus far in his presidency, following Monday's ceasefire agreement between Thailand and Cambodia. Trump, whose second term recently hit a 6-month milestone, which we covered here, touted the impressive results driven by his peace through strength foreign policy agenda during a bilateral meeting with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Trump Turnberry in Scotland shortly after Thailand and Cambodia announced their agreement. The announcement of the deal followed Trump forcing both countries to the negotiating table late Saturday, making clear that the leaders of the countries, he would not make a trade deal with either of them if the fighting persisted. They both face tariffs set to take effect Friday. It's amazing how you can get two fighting kids to the table. We're not going to go on vacation, either one of you. We're not going to Disney World if the two of you don't knock it off. Okay, Dad. We won't. Do you remember Ursula? Ursula von der Leyen. Ursula was threatening, she was beating her chest just a couple of months ago, wasn't she, that the EU wasn't going to deal, they weren't going to be bullied, this and such, and look at what she's done now. Humiliating, actually. I mean, I don't want to, he didn't say it this way, but I'll say it this way. She was all puffed up and threatening just a couple of months ago that she was absolutely not going to deal with him. Period, full stop. And she too, okay, Dad, whatever you... I have some more to say on this EU deal in particular coming up, but it's remarkable. And as for Russia, he says, I don't need the 50 days. In fact, I don't think these guys are actually going to seriously do anything to quell the fighting, and so we're going to ratchet that up a little bit. He said yesterday he's giving Vladimir Putin 10 to 12 days to end the war in Ukraine or face massive secondary tariffs on Moscow's trade partners. Trump had given Putin a 50-day deadline originally set to expire in early September to strike a peace deal with Ukraine. The president's new shortened deadline reflects his frustration with Putin. Speaking over there in Scotland yesterday, Trump said his new deadline is necessary because the United States does not see any progress being made. Here he is, 31-17, if you please, Paulie, addressing Vladimir Putin.
I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. There's no reason in waiting. It's 50 days. I want to be generous, but we just don't see any progress being made.
Okay, now what does that mean? He's going to ratchet up trade deals on people that do business with Russia. That's got to make the EU nervous, too. I wonder if that's part of Ursula's thinking. I wonder if he told her, you know what? You guys keep doing business with Russia, lining their pockets. I'm trying to get this war to wind down. You keep buying their oil. I wonder if that had something to do with this. And, of course, the most important thing is Donald Trump's not talking about firing a single shot. He is selling munitions to the EU and the European Union, and they, in turn, are then turning around and doing whatever they want to do with it, giving it away or selling it to Ukraine. But this was another point of contention for a lot of people that thought Trump was going back on his promises or whatever. Trump is putting money in everything he does. It is a transaction. He sells weaponry to the European Union. They, in turn, send it to Ukraine or whatever. And he says, hey, I'm not sending weaponry to Ukraine. I'm selling weaponry to the EU, and I'm cashing in. What they do with it, I assume they're going to give it to Ukraine, but that's none of my business. They can buy whatever they want. And I heard, it's interesting if you spend any time in the cesspool that is social media, which unfortunately I do, career risk and all that. But the number of people who said Trump was going back on his deal there are about 3 tracks that I want you to know are happening out there if you use social media with any regularity. Now, I know a lot of you do not, or choose to stay away from it or ignore it. But there are about 3 different tracks from people that claim to be on our side. There is this new insurgency inside supposed conservatism that I want you to be aware of if you're not. And be very, very cautious and question everybody who's coming at you on social media claiming to be a conservative or a Trump voter with one of the at least three storylines. There's the Epstein storyline, there's the Gaza storyline, and there's the Ukraine storyline. If I got those about right, Fast Eddie, I think those are the big three. Those are the ones that I call them the subversives, if you want to call them the influencers, whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
Gaza, Ukraine, Epstein. Have you noticed those three things continually pop up from our side, the influencer side? Stoking, trying to convince people that Trump is somehow a traitor on these issues?
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you said it because, honestly, I hadn't really thought about listing it out until now. So, yes, that's correct.
Those are the big three, and you can take them in any particular order. Gaza, Epstein, and Ukraine. Now, Epstein I can get into a little later. That's a little more cut and dry, and that's pretty self-evident what that is and what that isn't. And if you're a believer, it's funny. I got an email from a guy yesterday. He said, Stigall, this is very. I want to be careful not to lose my temper. I want to stay calm, and I want to explain. Guy emails me and he says, Stigall, I saw a video of Jeffrey Epstein before he was dead, and he was under oath, and he had just been arrested or some such thing. And he said on tape, when asked, was Trump with you? Were young girls present when Trump was sitting down talking with you or some such thing? And Trump said, Epstein, it was Epstein. Epstein said, I plead the fifth. I don't want to talk about this anymore. And this guy emailed, now he claims he's a serious Trump guy. He claims he's a listener of this show. And his claim in his email to me was, I saw that video and I'm done. I'm done with Trump. That's it. I'm convinced now that he's guilty. Guilty by association. If Epstein says he doesn't want to answer questions about Trump before he died, I saw that tape. I saw the tape. What the hell tape, I said? I'm in the business. What tape are you talking about of Epstein saying, I plead the fifth, I don't want to talk about Trump? Fast Eddie, have you seen any such tape?
Yes, I've seen the tape. Yes,
you have?
I have.
All right, where did it come from?
Don't know. I just saw the tape in passing on social media.
Oh, I see. So it's not there's nothing credible about it. You just saw it floating around on social media.
Correct. Yes, I did.
Yeah. Which I said to the guy, what's the source? And he, like you, said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, don't you think you should know? And don't you think if it were a legitimate source of news, don't you think it would be everywhere all day long, all the time? I mean, you know what CNN's doing this morning? CNN is running a story about how people can't afford pet food. There are more homeless. Yesterday, as I was getting ready for the show, I saw Jake Tapper say there's a line of women's golf apparel that's really hurting because of Trump's tariffs. I'm not kidding. So don't you think, if nothing else, don't you think CNN would be wall-to-wall with a tape saying that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, I plead the fifth, I don't want to talk about Trump? Don't you think CNN would be wall-to-wall with it this morning? Come on, folks. You got to be very, very cautious. Caveat emptor, buyer beware out there on social media and most influencers. Just stick with me. I'll let you know what you need to know. This is the Stigall Show. Yeah, okay, so the BK tells me that the context of the video that this guy emailed me about was from John Oliver's show, which I didn't even need him to finish the sentence once I heard John Oliver, because I knew exactly what that meant. So it was an old video of a deposition taken out of context where Trump and underage girls are in the same sentence. And BK was explaining to me, which this is one of those things that if you ever watch that impish little toad from the UK, John Oliver, who I guess HBO still pays to do a show, he's much in the same vein of Stephen Colbert or, The Daily Show. They take selective clips out of context. They make things sound and look like something they're not. And, of course, Epstein, when he's being deposed, the issue is of him having underage sex. The issue is of him having sex with young girls. And so in the line of questioning, the guy, the prosecutor or whomever is interviewing Epstein in the deposition asks if he's been with young girls with Trump present. And Epstein says, well, I'm taking the fifth on that. I'm not going to answer anything about that. He doesn't want to be implicated in anything related to rape of children, for heaven's sake. So that's, because Donald Trump's in the same sentence, they immediately jump to, well, there you go. So anyway, I caution you. If you don't know the source of stuff or you don't know the context of stuff in this 24-hour constant clickbait world in which we live, folks, you cannot take, a out-of-context video and render a decision for yourself. You just can't do it. Social media is not the place to do investigative work, okay? And just because somebody you trust has shared a clip of something, myself included, vet it. Go research it. Challenge it. I don't ask you to take anything at face value on this show. I hope by now I've earned your trust, and what I say is generally proven to be true and correct. And if it's not, I always come back and try to correct the record. That's all I have. Now, I've explained to you before, if you're on social media, they don't care. They have absolutely no investment in you whatsoever. All they need is your click. All they need is your download. And once they've got it, that's all they need from you. They got you. I have to do this 5 days a week. And if I can't get you to come back and listen to the show and trust what I have to say, I'm screwed. That's all I have. That's my only currency here, is your willingness to listen to the show and think what I have to say is somewhat credible, I hope. Clickbait morons? Look at this. Watch this. Breaking. Listen to this. What's happening in this picture? That's all the idiots do. Eddie, you know what I mean. That's all they do all day long. They just put stuff up. Watch this. Click this. And all they need you to do is go click. Oh, well, hell, that's enough for me. Yes, I saw 30 seconds of something out of context. The guy that posted it, all he needed was your click. He doesn't care whether it was legit or not. You find out later that it's total bunk, that it's AI, that it was taken out of context. He doesn't care. You know why? He got from you all he needed. Click. That's the game.
All that.
Anybody that spends any time on social media knows exactly what I mean. The flashing light. Breaking. Watch this. Can you believe this? It kind of makes me sick, I will say, to my stomach. I mean, I kind of tread in that world, but that's where we are. It's the Stigall Show. Live look at the southern tip of Manhattan today, and just 4 people killed in a mass shooting in Midtown Manhattan. They're not far from that shot that we're watching here this morning on the Salem News Channel. We'll have our friend Rob O'Donnell, who is a former NYPD detective. He covers things like this, has many friends involved in the activities yesterday, and just another mentally ill human being storming into a building, taking grievance with the NFL or some such thing. This was the message in his pocket. Anyway, we'll get into some of the details on that. And, police work continues to amaze, impress, and inspire me that there are men and women still willing to do it, given the politicians that they have to ultimately answer to. It's remarkable that there are people still willing to do police work in New York. And thank God that there are, one of whom was killed yesterday in that activity. So we'll talk about that a little later coming up. Yeah, check out the Harump Society, issued one late yesterday. If you have not yet become a Harump Society member, I hope you do. I think you'll really enjoy it. I will tell you that the people that have made relief efforts possible in Texas, in large measure, our partners, I can't thank you. I always say this, and I don't know how to say it more creatively, but I can't thank you enough for your generosity. The Food for the Poor folks, thank you as well. We have partnered with them again in this. It's now been 3 weeks, which seems hard to believe. It feels like it's in some ways been much longer than in some other ways. It feels like it was just yesterday when that devastating flooding whipped through Texas, and the Food for the Poor folks sprung into action right away. And you sprung into action right away. And your generosity is just unbelievable. It really is. There's nothing more I can say about it than that. I can't thank you enough, and I know that if there are those of you that have heard me talking about this, or you've been thinking, boy, I wish there was something more I could do there, a very quick reminder that emergency flood relief is continuing, and there is a bright red Help Texas logo at the top of my website if you go to chrisstigall.com. You can join so many in this audience who have already helped. Listen to this report from Texas, incidentally. The work is still very much going on there. Here's just a sample.
The debris is still slowly being removed along the Guadalupe River, and the many volunteers who rushed here are helping residents cope in ways both big and small.
Just tons of people helping out.
Homeowner Greg Adkins, whose home was badly damaged, has literally been surrounded by fellow Texans coming to lend a hand. Those volunteers offer hope, comfort, and relief
Yeah, and you have done a lot to help those folks with the emergency relief kits. Your donation of $50 sends an emergency relief kit to a family who is trying to just get out from under this mess. Food for the Poor is coordinating it all. Our Christian nonprofit friends, they are fantastic. Make a dollar stretch so you can feel very, very good when you send your money there. To help ease this crisis and facing these flooded out residents, which they need to help, you can phone in your gift today if you're so inclined. I hope that you will. 855-330-4673. 855-330-4673. You can also text my last name, Stigall, Stigall. Text it to 51555, and you can get a link to make a tax-deductible gift that way. It just takes a minute to help your fellow Americans down there in Texas. And like I said, you can feel good about giving to Food for the Poor. You can feel good about where this money's going right here in our own backyard to help fellow Americans who desperately need the help right now. ChrisStigall.com, click Help Texas, or call 855-330-4673. It's tax deductible. A $50 gift takes care of a family, and you do the math from there. Those of you who have given so much more, thank you so much. Again, your charity, your generosity is it's just overwhelming. I can't thank you enough. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the tariff sheriff, as I call him, on the Harump Society. Those of you who are Harumpers, I put this out yesterday. I did 3 monologues yesterday. Even taking a little day off, I was sitting at home just festering to get back here because I had so much to say. So if you're not a Harumper, you should check it out. I got it all out of my system yesterday when I sent it out there. But I call him the tariff sheriff, Donald Trump, because what he has managed to achieve, even Bill Maher, even a guy like Bill Maher is impressed. Take a listen, 3106.
I remember along with probably most people, was saying at the beginning, by the 4th of July, somebody had to think how the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me, but that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty. Because the truth is, I don't know what his strategy is. But look, the stock market is at record highs. I know not everybody lives by the stock market, but I also drive around. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that these tariffs were going to sink this economy by this time, and they didn't. So, how do we deal with that fact? Because that's the fact.
Do you know why a guy like Bill Maher has had a long career? Even though he's a leftist, he hates most of what you and I stand for. Bill Maher's actually able, confident enough in his own skin, whatever, intellectually honest enough to come around and admit when he's wrong from time to time. Not always, but on this, he's admitting it. This is why he's popular and guys like Stephen Colbert are losing their show. This is why Bill Maher continues to earn a living, a pretty handsome living, because he's intellectually honest enough to admit when he's wrong. Donald Trump has brilliantly and skillfully used tariffs as an extraordinarily powerful tool for negotiation. There can be no debating about it. And he's created an era of remarkable trade. Accomplishments that are going to solidify his legacy ultimately as the big deal maker that he's always said he is. It's the art of the deal on the world stage. This groundbreaking agreement with the EU, tariffs on their goods reduced to 15%, American exports, zero barriers. The deal includes $750 billion in EU energy purchases over the next 3 years, $600 billion in investments, billions more in military equipment, and it absolutely humiliated the EU. And he's already got impressive agreements with the UK, Japan, China, Canada. Skeptical people have predicted inflation. But Trump's strategy has proven them wrong. Every single time, prices have remained stable, Treasury is filled with billions, the economy is thriving, and American workers are reclaiming jobs that were previously lost. These agreements not only level the playing field, they significantly tilt it in favor of this this country. Dominance, encouraging factories to return home and build an America where they belong. Trump understands leverage. America's consumer market, the envy of the world, gives us an unparalleled power at the bargaining table, and he wisely yields it. They compel partners to remove barriers, invest in the United States, and purchase goods from a country like ours like never before. And these successes represent something historic. It's a new world order. Capitalism and free markets are triumphing over the elites. Trump understands money drives the world, and he's reviving America's waning global stature by unleashing our underutilized assets. Long criticized by Democrats and elitist Republicans, they view capitalism as evil and see success as only something to be taxed. People like Marine Le Pen have decried the deal as a fiasco for Europe, underscoring Trump's dominance, by the way. More than simple trade agreements, this signifies a profound rendering. This is the golden age that Trump promised. It's not just smart economics. It's America first in action. Remember Van Jones said Donald Trump is just smarter than me, you, and all of his critics? It's kind of what Bill Maher was saying. Trump's trade deals celebrate everyday Americans making voluntary choices in the marketplace, together building the world's most desirable economy. It's we, the people. Through our free transactions and spending, we're the winning hand that Trump plays when he's at the table. It's a powerful economy that gives him unmatched leverage, ours is. And as an added bonus, Trump is using tariffs to negotiate not just trade deals, but peace deals too. And this stems from the fact that President Trump loves the country as founded. More importantly, he loves you, the American people. He actually cares about the people of this country. And it's for that reason that his enemies are allowed to behave the way they are. Why judges attack him. Why he was, in my view, allowed to be nearly murdered. This is what happens when America's enemies are up against the wall and they don't know what else to do. They try to engage in lawfare and, dare I say, maybe even murder, if that's what it takes, because the Democrat Party is in a free fall. I've got some new polling from the Wall Street Journal that say Democrats are in worse shape than they've ever been. I read a column yesterday that said Trump and his policies could put this Republican Party, in spite of themselves, it could put them in perpetual power for the next decade. Meanwhile, Democrats' approval rating with registered voters has plunged to a 35-year low, and Republicans maintain an edge on most every top issue Americans care about. 63% of registered voters view Democrats unfavorably. It's the lowest rating they have scored since 1990. Over there at CNN, even Jeff Zeleny is forced to admit, live on air, 3110 here, Paulie, even he is forced to admit the tariff strategy is working.
Isabel, the bottom line is this is the biggest trade deal in President Trump's effort to effectively reshape the global trading order. That has been one of his central priorities since taking office in January. He's been issuing many threats of tariffs, but they clearly have been working in terms of bringing other countries, allies, and adversaries alike, in some cases, to the negotiating table. And the latest example was today here in Scotland when the leader of the European Commission, who of course is negotiating for the European Union, she agreed to a 15% across-the-board tariff. Now that is significantly higher than the 10% tariffs in existence now, but it's much lower than the 30% threat that was coming on Friday and the 50% threat that was made in May. So clearly there has been an instance where the president has been using his threats of higher tariffs as a negotiating tactic, and in this case it certainly worked.
So if CNN, Bill Maher, and most sane people, if they're remotely fair, are forced to admit that this was a huge victory, what do Democrats offer? Why are they on the toilet? Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Schumer, 3115.
Over the weekend, Donald Trump announced a new trade deal with the European Union. It will result in a $90 billion per year tax hike on American families. When you raise tariffs, the American families pay for it. $90 billion tax on American families in this tariff deal with the European Union. Donald Trump is, as usual, trying to hype up, exaggerate, and lie about his Donald Trump always lies.
Yeah. And Chuck Schumer is so committed to it, he's reading every word from paper, not looking up. When CNN, when a Democrat is saying the opposite of what even CNN is saying, and CNN would love to parrot what Chuck Schumer is saying, you know Democrats have got nothing. We were just talking during the break, Fast Eddie and I, about this American Eagle backlash. I saw this yesterday, and I had to laugh aloud. Sydney Sweeny, I don't know much about. I've seen her. The only reason I know anything about Sydney Sweeny is she popped up on Saturday Night Live. I don't know anything about her, other than she hosted Saturday Night Live, and I'm a red-blooded American straight male, and I realize you can't be that anymore or be sent away to the gulag, but I am. And Sydney Sweeny has, I think, pretty effectively marketed her assets. Fair, Fast Eddie. She's aware that she's an attractive woman, and she plays to that. Fair?
Yeah, I would say fair. Yeah.
I don't think she would argue that she's leaning into what makes her.
She's not shy, Chris. Not shy
appealing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So now she's been featured in the American Eagle clothing line in some ads. And NBC News is where I saw this story. American Eagle sparks backlash for touting Sydney Sweeney's great jeans. Jeans. I actually snorted aloud when reading this yesterday. Are you ready for this? American Eagle's Great Jeans advertising campaign with Sydney Sweeny is at the center of the latest political firestorm online, drawing accusations of racial undertones in its messaging, and very specifically, they make it out to be that it's some sort of wink to eugenics. That it's some So American Eagle has, she has great jeans. They spelled Genes, and then they cross out that, and they write Jeans. And there's very attractive Sydney Sweeny in these jeans. The suggestion is, I'm not even going to bother reading this, but the suggestion is that this is somehow, it's two-part. Number one, it's a pretty girl, and it's an advertisement by a clothing company saying, hey, this pretty girl wears these jeans. You should want and aspire to look like her and buy these jeans too, which is what advertising has done since the dawn of advertising. Attractive person, models, uses, eats, drinks thing. You see attractive person and say, well, if attractive person uses it, then maybe I should use it, and maybe I'll become attractive or more desirable or look like that person, or maybe I'll be a little more in style and in fashion like that person. That's advertising. Everybody understands that. But we live in an age now where you're not allowed to say some people are better looking than others. I just told the guys during the break, if I could do it, if I owned a media company, like if I were the head of my own media company and I were hiring people, you know what I'd do? I'd hire nothing but babes. I would. Hopefully they'd be smart and articulate too, but that's what I do, because you know why? I was just talking about it earlier in the show. Click, 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 click. We're in a world where the click is all that matters. Did you get the click? Did you click? And you know what makes people click more than anything else? A good-looking woman with boobs. It just happens. It's true. And Eddie, it works with women too. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the psychology is, but women will click on the picture of a pretty girl, maybe to like her, maybe to hate her, but women do it just the same as men. Men go, hot girl, click. And women click because, I don't know, maybe they want to look like the woman, or they're inspired by the woman, or maybe they want to write a comment about, I can't believe what you... But whatever. It works. It works. American Eagle got what they wanted. But more importantly, there's actually something kind of nice and wholesome about the return of attractive people modeling things, and men, straight men, getting to say, hey, I like an attractive, pretty lady, and I like looking at her and talking about that fact. Now, I get it. I'm not proud of it. As a Christian, I try hard not to be a lust guy, but look, that's... every single day you wake up, you got to avert your eyes, because good luck. If you're spending, again, any time on social media, it's like, it's impossible. There's a point to it. Now, if you want to question whether or not Sydney Sweeny should leverage her assets to sell goods and services, you can take that up with her. But from beer to cars to who knows what, name it, in time memoriam, pretty girls selling things is nothing new. The left thinks the way to sell things and move product and grow their movement is to pierce things and tat things up and color your hair purple and pretend you're a man. if you're a woman. And that's why Democrats have enjoyed approval ratings in the toilet. And Sydney Sweeney's advertising is going through the roof. More in a minute. Back again for Balance of Nature. And in the Maha movement, one thing we all care about is what's in the container, the ingredients. You flip that thing over, and if you can't pronounce it and you don't recognize it, you put it back. I've seen my kids doing this now. They're very health conscious that way. I like that. And the next generation seems to be more so, and that's why I tell them Balance of Nature, and you can feel good about it too. Balance of Nature is just that. It's nothing more than natural fruit and vegetable, plucked right from the soil. No binders, no additives, no fillers. Harvested ingredients that are freeze-dried into a fine powder, and then they use an advanced vacuum cold process to better preserve the nutritional value in that powder. You can know with confidence that you're talking about 31 ingredients that are strictly fruits and vegetables. Every single day, that's what you get in your Balance of Nature. Imagine a platter with 31 different fruits and vegetables on it. Join me. Take some Balance of Nature and get healthy. Use that discount code CHRIS. 35% off plus free shipping when you do. You got to use the discount code CHRIS, though. All right, so here it is again, the number 800-2468-751. Use the discount code CHRIS or order online, balanceofnature.com. Discount code CHRIS to get that 35% off plus free shipping.
Well, I don't know about you, but losing weight is one of those things I have been battling my entire life. Hi, it's Chris Stigall, and trying to keep it off once I've lost it. Instead of gaining it back, that's also been a very difficult thing. I decided I was going to try something new. I decided I was going to try my PhD weight loss. And I decided I was going to try it because I know personally colleagues and many listeners to the Salem Radio Network that have lost thousands of pounds of weight combined thanks to the My PhD Weight Loss program. So I'm going to call up Dr. Ashley Lucas and the team at My PhD Weight Loss. I'm going to get one of these personal nutrition coaches. I hope you'll join me in this weight loss journey. I hope very soon you and I will be able to brag about all the weight and inches we're losing off our waist. I'd just like to get a little weight off these knees, you know. I'm not getting any younger. It's going to be a lot easier to walk around a golf course this summer. Join me. MyPhDWeightLoss.com is the website, or 864-644-1900. 864-664-1900 or myphdweightloss.com. Tell them Chris Stigall sent you, and good luck. Here we go.
Great to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in on this Tuesday edition of the Stigall Show. Our telephone number, 855-Stigall. If you want to get in here, live shot of Dallas. Beautiful sunrise. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, thanks for choosing the Salem News Channel to watch us. You can take the app along, download it so that you always can watch or listen however you like. It's an easy app to use, and it's free. And thanks for listening on 660 AM The Answer. Mark Davis in for me yesterday, and I'm always appreciative when Mark does it. It's great to have a pro behind the mic. When you're out, you know the show's in good hands. Mark's always the best, and he is one of Dallas's favorites. And I know why. So thanks, Mark. I appreciate you being here. Thanks to everyone listening all across the great state of Texas. And remember, over there at chrisstigall.com, speaking of our friends in Texas, Kerrville, Texas still very much needs your help. And if you have not had the opportunity to give yet and you'd like to, they still very much can use your help with those emergency relief kits, those flooded out victims, and our friends at Food for the Poor. They're collecting those donations. Go to chrisstigall.com. And you can see the Help Texas banner. Just click on it and give what you can, or call 855-330-4673, 855-330-4673, and try to help them out if you can. I hope that you will. Thanks to everybody who already has. Yesterday, a lone gunman killed 4 people, including a New York City Police Department officer in Midtown before killing himself. We know more about this, but it's always the police work that interests me and reminds us all of the work they continue to do, despite the fact that most politicians in big cities like Manhattan do not have their backs. I believe most people like you in this audience do. And so we think about them and we talk about what it is to police in this day and age with our friend Rob O'Donnell. He is a retired NYPD detective. He hosts his own program, very successful, the Rob O'Donnell Show on WILK, News Radio 103.1, every weekday in the afternoon, 3 to 6. Woke up early with us this morning. Rob, thanks for being with us. Hi.
Yeah, thanks for covering this story, Chris. It's an important story.
It is, and I hate that every time we talk to you, it has something to do with some kind of very violent activity in the city of New York. But I know your brothers and sisters in the NYPD matter a lot to you, and in cities that vast, that big, with crime as high as it is, they've still got a job to do, even if the politicians in their city don't back them up.
And we see that they do it, and they run towards this gunfire day in and day out. You know, there was news coverage at the story being at Midtown Manhattan, be at the heart of New York City. You saw dozens, if not hundreds, of law enforcement officers running towards the gunfire while it was still an active scene. And if that doesn't tell you the epitome of what a New York City police officer or any police officer across the nation at this day and age, that politics are set aside, your religion is set aside, how much you make is set aside, your demographics are set aside. They are putting themselves between you and the bad guy each and every time.
I don't know how much you want to go here, but I was intrigued that the officer killed, last name Islam, he's a 36-year-old immigrant from Bangladesh. He has 2 young sons. His wife was pregnant with their 3rd child. And here's what I'd say about that. I don't know. I'd love one day maybe to interview his wife, but I have a very funny feeling that Mr. Islam came to this country to make a better life for himself as a legal citizen and thought an honest living and a great way to provide for his family in the United States of America from Bangladesh was to train and suit up and become an officer in the New York City Police Department. That's a pure guess, but that's my read on it. And frankly, as the ranks thin, because a lot of people don't want to do the job, he stepped in.
He did. I mean, he's the epitome, the poster child for legal immigration and how this is supposed to work. Coming to the United States for a better life for you. He hasn't been here very long. His children were ages 7, 5, and his wife was 8 months pregnant. And the second, I got that information from members from his precinct, the 47th precinct up in the Bronx, and my thoughts and prayers go to that extended family as well as the entire NYPD. It also shows the problem in New York City. This officer was working what's called a paid detail, which means you're in full NYPD uniform. You're basically, the public doesn't know any difference of you on duty or working this basic chosen overtime through a program through the NYPD where private entities hire uniform NYPD police officers to be a uniform presence at their facilities, at their office buildings. Now we have to ask, obviously having 2 children and another on the way, he was doing all he could, not at top pay yet as an NYPD police officer. But where are we at in the world's largest city of New York City, the largest police department in the world, when we have officers 4 years trying to do the right thing, having to work overtime at this paid detail just to be there? Thankfully, he was there. He gave his life.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rob, but that I didn't know that component of it, and that's a very, very interesting. So he's not only paid his New York City Police Department salary, but then he's killed doing private security work effectively as an officer. I didn't know that part. That's very telling what you just said.
Yeah, they're saying private security, but he's working it through the NYPD. So he is the company pays the NYPD to pay him. So it's called a paid detail. A lot of companies do it. A lot of agencies do it across the nation. NYPD started it when I was there. I've done the paid detail unit to make some extra overtime. When there's no police work overtime through your precinct, through your department, you can sign up for this program, and companies like this office building or buildings or movie theaters hire uniformed police officers through the NYPD. So you're not paid from the private entity. You're paid through the NYPD. The company is paying the NYPD extra.
Wow. Okay. And as you know, I hate to even give much time to the lunatic that did this, but apparently note on the pocket said he is, they've identified him from Las Vegas and said he had grievances with the NFL and suffered CTE, a disease linked to head trauma, although there's no indication that he played football, or at least not for the NFL.
No, the last footprint that I could find for this individual is high school football. He was a standout high school player. He's never played college from everything that I found in the investigation that's pending so far. And again, we're in the early stages here. The fact that he did have a valid or in his possession concealed carry permit from Las Vegas, but they knew he had mental health issues. So where was that lapse in programming that he was still allowed to maintain and work private security for a casino, which is being reported now? Is that armed security, unarmed security? We don't know that, but he did have in his possession that was valid until 2027 a concealed carry permit from Las Vegas. So if he did have documented mental health issues, then there's a lapse right there on why he even possessed firearms.
Paulie, if you could, 3124 here, CNN, here's how CNN jumped in to describe this as the details were coming out yesterday early.
They do not know who he is. They know he is a male, possibly white. He's wearing sunglasses. He appears to have a mustache. And that picture has been distributed to every police officer in New York City, particularly has been sent to the phones of the search teams inside that building, because whenever they encounter a group of people, the first thing they have to figure out is that individual among these people hiding among victims or
Yeah. The notable thing about that there, and I know he used to work, that's the guy that used to be on ABC. I forgot his name. John, what's his name? John
Miller.
Anyway,
John Miller.
John Miller, thank you. And I know he was in law enforcement for a time. I'm not necessarily throwing stones at him, but they immediately jump in with the guy is possibly white. Now, I know he's a light-skinned guy, but he's not a white guy. Is that kind of reporting, does that bug you or not, Rob, as somebody who's done law enforcement and is now in media?
Well, no, Chris, I think you should be throwing stones. I think we should all be throwing stones, especially in the law enforcement community. Listen, I know John Miller. John Miller was an ABC reporter who Bill Bratton brought in early in his tenure as police commissioner in New York to be his public relations guy, and he did a very good job at it. And again, John's a friend. I know John. He should know better here. Here's a case of him pandering to his paycheck at this point in age. He had the same photos that I did as early as I did. It was very obvious that this was not possibly a white male that they were looking for. They knew more details than he did. He had the California, the Las Vegas pistol permit because I had it at that time. And if he didn't have it, he's not very good at his job. So he should be called out on this because he says, I don't know a lot about this, but, well, then leave the but out. Say you don't know what you're looking for. You saw the picture. And if you're going to hypothesize like that to pander to CNN or any news organization, it just goes to show that you shouldn't be in the position you're in. So yes, we should be calling him out because maybe next time he'll think twice before he does something like that.
So you think he very intentionally said white just to try to make it political?
I don't think he made it political. I think he was pandering to the news organization he was on. I think he was saying what they wanted to hear or whatever guidelines he's might be provided there. I don't know that. You know, I've never been told what to say or how to say it when I'm on shows like yours or any show. But he should know better than this. John's a better person than this. The fact that he said that when he had the same picture that I did and a lot of people did just goes to show that he was not being honest and sincere with the public that are listening to him for news.
Outstanding coverage, honest coverage. That's the kind of stuff you get from Rob O'Donnell, who's been a great friend and a resource on all matters of law enforcement for many, many years. Listen to him on 103.1 WILK News Radio in Scranton. And 3 to 6 in the afternoon is where you can find him. And online, too, Rob. People, if they want to stream your show, they can listen to it that way, too, right?
Absolutely. We're anywhere on the Odyssey app, and you can follow me on X and social media across the platforms.
All right, my friend. That's at O'Donnell_R. Rob O'Donnell, thank you, my friend. Quick break, back with more in a moment on The Stigall Show. This is exactly what I mean about the clickbait era that we're in. This lunatic Jasmine Crockett, you know her. Jasmine Crockett of Texas believes that she should lead the party because she has a prominent following on social media. She absolutely said it. She said it in an interview with The Atlantic. Earlier this year, she began pitching herself for the top Democrat spot on the House Oversight Committee to follow party members, sending text messages, emails, hosting conversations on the House floor. The space was awaiting vacancy due to a Democrat rep named Gary Connolly planning to step aside as he battles cancer. Crockett lost her pitch, and Democrats eventually voted in a representative named Robert Garcia of California. According to The Atlantic, Crockett barely stood a chance and received just 6 votes before she dropped out of the race for this coveted seat. And here's how it reads. To Crockett, the race had become a small-scale version of the Democrat Party's bigger predicament. Her colleagues still haven't learned what, to her, is obvious. Democrats need sharper, fiercer communicators. It's like there's one clear person in the race that has the largest social media following, unquote. Literally what they said. Democrats need sharper, fiercer communicators. Quote, it's like there's one clear person in the race that has the largest social media following. She thinks she should be elected to lead in a committee for Democrats because she has a large social media following. This is currency in 2025. Crockett reportedly, this is my favorite part of this story, keeps a headshot of herself. Do you have a lock screen on your phone, Fast Eddie? Do you keep a picture? So, for instance, on my lock screen, I don't know. Well, I can't show you now. I would, but let's see. I don't know if you can see that or not. See, that's my kids. Right. I keep my kids on my lock screen on my phone, right? How about you? You have one?
Yep, my wife and son. There they are.
Okay, Jasmine, that's lovely. See, there you go, little Eddie and Melissa. As for me, same family, but Democrat Jasmine Crockett of Texas keeps a headshot of herself on her lock screen.
Of course she does, Chris. Of course she does.
Can you imagine? I mean, just for a minute, can you imagine knowing anyone that keeps a photo of themselves on their lock screen? And if you know someone who keeps a photo of themselves on their phone's locked screen,
oh God.
What does that tell you exactly? When you open the phone, which I think all of us use and check multiple times a day, there's you looking at you. I mean, why not just carry around a... I remember growing up as a kid, remember the Smurfs? One of the Smurfs, I think it was a gay Smurf, I don't know for sure, but the Smurf had a flower in the hat called Vanity Smurf. And the character Vanity Smurf used to carry around a mirror. And that was the whole character of that Smurf, was that he was constantly looking at himself in the mirror. Vanity Smurf. That might be what I call Jasmine Crockett now, Vanity Smurf. little something for a throwback reference for you Gen Xers out there. 855 Stigall's the telephone number. Trump and these trade victories, ladies and gentlemen, they are huge. We're going to unpack just exactly what they mean coming up next. It is undeniable. Undeniably true, even CNN has to confess it. What Trump has achieved with the EU is nothing short of remarkable. Even Jeff Zeleny, we played this earlier, let me let you in on it again in case you weren't with us earlier. 3110 here. Here's CNN even having to confess what Trump has pulled off here with the EU is nothing short of a masterstroke.
Isabel, the bottom line is this is the biggest trade deal in President Trump's effort to effectively reshape the global trading order. That has been one of his central priorities since taking office in January. He's been issuing many threats of tariffs, but they clearly have been working in terms of bringing other countries, allies, and adversaries alike, in some cases, to the negotiating table. And the latest example was today here in Scotland when the leader of the European Commission, who of course is negotiating for the European Union, she agreed to a 15% across-the-board tariff. Now that is significantly higher than the 10% tariffs in existence now, but it's much lower than the 30% threat that was coming on Friday, and the 50% threat that was...
Yeah, and bigger if they didn't come to the table. And she originally, the head of the EU, said she wasn't going to be rushed into this. She wasn't going to be bullied into this or what have you. And then all of a sudden she's there smiling and shaking hands and agreeing to 15%. So what's it all mean? What's it mean for you? What's the significance of this? Gentleman who knows this well because he comes from this space. He's a former advisor to the British Trade Secretary and a former advisor to the United States Trade Representative. His name is Shankar Singham. He's now the CEO of a company called Competary. And Mr. Singham, glad to make your acquaintance. Welcome to the show, sir.
Well, very good to meet with you, Chris, and good to be here.
So I would love for you, I guess you're native of the UK, is that right?
Yep, live both in the UK and in Virginia here. So
could you speak then to the significance of this as it relates maybe to the UK and to the EU? Because I know the UK has also done a trade deal, and they've actually come in at a lower rate than maybe Japan and the EU broadly because they're a smaller economy. But how do you read this through the European lens right now?
Yeah, so I think what to the sort of the CNN interview you just played. I mean, what we're seeing from the Trump administration is a comprehensive realignment of the sort of global trading picture. And essentially, what the president is doing is he's saying to countries like the EU and Japan, and to the extent the UK has copied European regulation, the UK as well, Korea, India, others, is that look, for the last 30 years. you have distorted your markets, you've damaged US exporters, you've damaged US interests, and while your tariffs are not necessarily the problem, your other barriers are very much the problem, and you've done nothing about those. In fact, you've increased them. So if you look at the book he waved around on Liberation Day, which was the National Trade Estimate Inventory of Foreign Country Trade Barriers, those entries of different countries have gotten progressively bigger and bigger and bigger over the last 30 years. And what he's essentially saying is, look, that game is now over. We're going to charge a tariff to take into account all of your unfair trade practices and so forth. And then we're going to have a discussion about how you lower this tariff based on your ability to basically make progress on reducing all of those barriers and distortions. And that's essentially what's happened here. The UK agreed to do some of those things. The EU has agreed to do some of those things. There's an ongoing conversation about many of the issues that American companies have sort of cared about for the last, as I say, 20 or 30 years. And we've never seen anything like this before in the international trading system, going back to 1947. So, it's a needed corrective in my view.
Could I ask you about that? Shankar Singham again with us, former advisor to the British Trade Secretary, former advisor to the United States Trade Representative as well. Why haven't we? I've always been curious about this. Republican and Democrat alike, former presidents have not been interested in renegotiating any of this. Trump has. What is it? Just inertia, laziness? Why has the United States never been interested in having a discussion about this before now?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. I think first of all, there's a lack of understanding of how damaging these sorts of things actually are. There's sort of assumption because the tariff is a number, right? You see the number; it's very obvious that that's a particular problem. Back in 1947, when we started negotiating tariff reductions after the Second World War, they were very high. I mean, the tariffs across the world were very, very high. As the tariffs came down, all of these other things started to become much, much more significant. And our economic modeling suggests that if you think of this as an iceberg, the tariff that other countries have on the US is about 20% of the iceberg. It's the bit above the water that you see. But below the water is 80% of the iceberg. And that's these kinds of issues, these kinds of unfair trade practices and so forth. And obviously there are countries like Japan and Korea and now China that are, absolutely masterful proponents of distorting their markets for trade advantage. So I think it's a combination of a lack of understanding of the effect, and I think it's also a lack of imagination. I think the thought was that we could just ask them to lower their barriers in these areas. We could, sort of invite them to do it. And unfortunately, there are a lot of powerful interests in these countries that benefit enormously from these barriers, and they're not going to roll over because you ask. And what the president has done is he said, okay, I'm not going to ask anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make your access to the US economy contingent on you reducing these kinds of things. And it seems to be working. Could I ask you,
Mr. Singham, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You said it seems to be working. It does seem to be working. And the question is that I hear, the left, it's so funny all of a sudden, the left, they've become very interested in the economy and what people are paying for things. And they say, well, this is just going to be passed on to the consumer. And Chuck Schumer was on the floor of the Senate. This is just going to make things more expensive for the American consumer. Why do you believe that's not true? Why has that not happened so far, and why do you believe that's not true? Now, they will point to certain things made in certain places that have gotten more costly. I'm not saying nothing's gotten more expensive, but on balance, it hasn't across the economy. And do you think companies are going to start ratcheting up costs and prices to Americans because of this?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, what happens when you increase the tariff, as the president has done, is the importer generally will pay that tariff to the US government. So this is the argument they're making, that because of this it all gets passed on to the consumer. But the price that companies charge to the consumer depends on how much competition there is in the market. So if you are a very competitive market, then a lot of this price won't be charged. I mean, it's the importer who will pay, and the importer may start looking for alternative sources of supply if the one that they have becomes becomes very expensive. So ultimately it's bad for the exporter because they're going to lose that source of distribution, but the consumer doesn't pay an additional amount. That only happens if your market is very uncompetitive and there's really only one source of supply.
Oh, this is so smart. And this is what Trump knows. He knows that in order to bring industry back home and make us more competitive with the globe, prices aren't going to be passed on to Americans. If Americans can compete and make the thing too, you're sort of at a standoff, if you will, right?
And the other point, of course, is the other bit that doesn't get fully covered is at the same time as doing all the tariffs, the president has also said he wants to reduce anti-competitive regulations in the U.S. market. Now, that will have a much bigger effect on making things more efficient, on lowering price. So you've got, yes, a little bit of tariff pressure for prices to go up, but you've got a lot of regulatory reform in the U.S. which will cause prices to come down. And certainly, if you have, a Walmart, for example, which is a very powerful buyer, they're not going to eat the cost of the tariff, and they're not going to pass that on to their consumers. They're going to make the exporter pay for that. So it depends on what the market actually looks like. And I think what we're seeing, there may be some slight inflationary pressure as a result of the tariff. I think it's offset by a lot of these regulatory things that we are able to do. But compared to the gain that you get from actually causing other countries to lower their distortions. Remember, when President Trump came in, he came in largely because there were lots of people who had lost their jobs in steel mills in Pennsylvania and Ohio and places like this because of China distortions, because China had distorted its market and overproduced steel as a result and caused these steel companies to go out of business. So the gain you get from actually correcting all of that is massive, so I think, if this can succeed in lowering those distortions, you can get deals locked in by the US, you can improve the US's regulatory environment, then, he's talked about a golden age. I think you could have a golden age, not just in the US, but actually elsewhere.
One of the big deals with the EU was them buying more of our energy. We're producing a ton of it. We can produce more for them to buy. But Russia, Trump has also said he's going to move on Russia a lot more aggressively. He's going to use tariffs to do it. Effectively, anybody that does business with Russia is going to be punished big time if Russia doesn't knock it off in Ukraine. Will that work as a cudgel? And the energy exchange and purchasing from Europe to Russia, can we impact it that way too? And I've got about a minute, if you please.
Well, there's about a win-win here for the Europeans because they need to wean themselves off Russian gas. That's clear, and there's plenty of US energy that needs to be produced, and the European energy policies have been such that they've escalated their own energy costs as well. So there's a win-win there. I think you're also seeing the use of American power to broker deals with countries where they are in conflict. You saw this with Cambodia and Thailand. You saw it with Pakistan and India. So I think we're seeing a lot more activity from the US on, really trying to force parties to, come to agreements. Whereas in the past, we've sort of sat there and let them fester.
Yeah, and what it means financially, it will be fascinating to see if, a year from this conversation, what the economy looks like. And China, by the way, on deck. And this levels more pressure against China, I assume, too, to get a deal. So
we could have an announcement as early as today.
With China?
I think it'll be a deal that will extend the days, so they won't go to the higher tariff that they're negotiating in Sweden right now. But the goal here is to get China to do even more of what the EU and the UK and Japan and Indonesia and others have done.
Thank you, Shankar Singham. Trump holding these press conferences in Scotland is just... It's so good. He points out how ugly windmills are. I love that he keeps hammering on this because this is a particular bugaboo of mine. Actually, there are three things that I love that he hammers on regularly. Water pressure. He hates faucets that he says go drip, drip, drip. He wants to wash his luscious, wonderful hair with heavy water pressure. He hates these new stupid faucet heads. Drip, 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 he says. He likes the incandescent bulb because he likes the light that projects on him from the incandescent bulb. I love that everything he says is through his own vanity. And then he hates windmills, and I hate windmills. I think the scourge of the green movement that will be left behind for decades to follow is those stupid wind farms and those ugly windmills that dot the countryside and make the view of some of the most beautiful countryside across the world and out in the ocean just litter it. It's disgusting. Unproven energy, not at all carbon neutral, Lord knows. You got to constantly repair those things. They rot and they... Anyway, here's Trump. I just love it. 31-20 here while he's over there at Turnberry.
Wind is a disaster.
But in Scotland and across the UK, wind farms...
I know, it's a shame. It's not his fault. I used to tell Alex Salmon...
Have you spoken to the Prime Minister, and will you speak to the first...
Well, all I can do is give my... Look, wind is the most expensive form of energy, and it destroys the beauty of your fields and your plains and your waterways. And look out there. There's no windmills. But if you look in another direction, you see windmills. When we go to Aberdeen, you'll see some of the ugliest windmills you've ever seen. They're the height of a 50-story building. And you can take 1,000 times more energy out of a hole in the ground this big. This big. It's called oil and gas. And you have it there, the North Sea. This big, that nobody would even see. You can take 1,000 times more power because the wind is intermittent. It doesn't work. It's extremely expensive. All the windmills are made in China. They used to be Germany and China. Now they're mostly in China. They all come out of China. They say that the blades, which are carbon fiber, you can't bury. Oh, okay, you can't bury. What are you going to do? Dump them in the ocean someplace? Because they only last a certain period of time. And remember, a windmill has a life of 8 years, especially when they're out in the salty sea and they start to rot and to rust. You're going to have to replace them. It's very hard to replace them. Wind needs massive subsidy. And you are paying in Scotland and in UK and all over the place where they have massive subsidies to have these ugly monsters all over the place. So I've restricted windmills in the United States. Now, a couple we have, the poor stupid people at the beginning, they approved them, so they have their full approvals. But I've restricted windmills in the United States because they also kill all your birds. They wipe out. It's interesting. If you shoot a bald eagle in the United States, they put you in jail for 5 years. And yet windmills knock out hundreds of them. They don't do anything. You explained that. So it's a very expensive energy. It's a very ugly energy. And we won't allow it in the United States.
Okay. Yeah. Do you understand the significance of a president who has the command of the facts as he does regarding that particular issue? This guy knows energy production and all of the left-wing green news scam projects. He knows it like the back of his hand. Have you ever heard anybody, a politician, a CEO, have you ever heard anybody that plainly explain the fallacy behind wind and why stupid windmills, you can't bury them, you got to constantly replace them, they last about 8 years on average, they're certainly not carbon neutral, you dig a little hole in the ground and you can safely bring up natural gas and oil and other things to power, lots more, by how much I don't know, but lots more than you could with a stupid wind turbine. And the fact that you got to replace them, and yeah, as he points out in the ocean, you ever seen anything? You ever built a house? You ever seen a house left abandoned on a coastline for any amount of time? Imagine what it would be like if your house was built in the middle of the ocean. That's a wind turbine. It's stupid. It's subsidized. It's ugly. It's inefficient. It's not green. And I'm with him. I know this may seem in the grand scheme of things like an unimportant thing, but when you talk about trying to make the earth a cleaner place, pollution matters too. And those things, as far as I'm concerned, are big-time polluters. Big time. Worse than any coal-fired power plant. 855 Stigall is the telephone number. Quick break for news, and we'll be right back here on the Stigall Show.
It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years now. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about him, Bob.
Yeah, it's really a thrill for me
to have both the dentists, my daughter and Dr. Jared Geddes. One of the things that I love about them both is when they don't have a patient in their chair, they're in my room watching what I do and trying to learn from me. And we hear enough about the new generation and they think they know everything and they don't want to work. And I've got two dentists who are really, really want to learn and really, really willing to work hard. And I enjoy learning from them. They brought some new skills and some new technologies to our office that will be great benefits to our patients. And so, if anything, I think that having them both there is going to expand and lengthen my career as opposed to shorten my career.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com.
You know, it's been 3 weeks. It's hard to believe. 3 weeks since that catastrophic flooding hit Texas. And I just cannot thank you enough. Those of you that have already stepped up and helped in this campaign to help our fellow Americans, those Texans struggling in the aftermath of this disaster. They are still, as I understand it this morning, searching for 3 people, which is 3 weeks, and there are still people missing. It's an ongoing, continuing effort, and it's why we continue to work with our Food for the Poor partners. It's a Christian, not-for-profit. They're on the ground, and they are continuing to rush emergency relief kits to people throughout that flooded region. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the lives lost in this tragedy are still, as you know, being tallied at this hour. Listen.
The numbers that I have of those who have lost their lives statewide in this flooding episode in the month of July is now 135. Those who have lost their lives in the Kerrville area because of the floods is now 116. We will continue the search for everybody in every single region that was affected by these devastating floods.
So here's the deal. A gift of just $50 rushes an emergency relief kit to a hurting family displaced by these Texas floods. $100 gets a kit packed with supplies to 2 families. Whatever you can donate, it's going to make a huge impact on these men, women, and children suffering in Central Texas. If you go to chrisstigall.com, there's a Help Texas banner at the top of my page. You can make a donation right there. Rush emergency relief kits containing hygiene items, diapers, emergency medical supplies, all the essential things that these people need in a crisis are part of this kit, and you can be a part of it. Food for the Poor coordinating with our trusted partners in San Antonio, delivering all these shipments as you send in your dollars, and I can tell you they can make a dollar stretch. You can feel great about sending your money to these folks. I know that in times like these, everybody's kind of asking for your ability to assist and aid in these various. This is an organization we partnered with for a long time, and you can feel very, very good that your dollars are going exactly where you're being told they're going and being used exactly the way you'd want them to be used. You can phone in your gift today at 855-330-4673 if you haven't yet. 855-330-4673, or text my last name Stigall to 51555, and you can make that a tax-deductible gift that way at 51555. Text Stigall. Just take a moment if you can. Whatever you can do. Doesn't have to be $50. Great if it is. Great if it's more. And I'll be sharing some of the names of the folks that have stepped up here over the weekend. I get every name. Every time you go online and go to chrisstigall.com and click on that Help Texas banner and you leave your name and where you live, I read it and I get to see it, and it's so cool. I'm going to share some of your names coming up. Good to be with you, folks. Welcome in on this Tuesday edition of the Stigall Show, looking live at Orlando. I was just talking with a friend yesterday who lives in Orlando. He said it is just miserably hot. I think most of the country is miserably hot, but that Florida hot is a unique kind of hot. That's just dog-choking humidity hot. That's the, you know, when it's so humid that the air's just stagnant, you sweat and it doesn't go anywhere. That's, you people in Phoenix, I know, and in the drier West, that's what they say, the dry heat's better. You know, if you're sweating in humidity, everything's just, it's like a hot, wet sponge in a microwave. Oof. 9:50 a.m. the answer there in Orlando. Beautiful looking shot. Glad to have you along. Thanks for listening throughout Florida, all across the country on great Salem affiliates. Our Stigall Show is now, I don't know, on something like 400 plus radio stations. We are so grateful to you for listening on the radio when you can. And if you can't, maybe you watch the Salem News Channel as you are right now. And if you're taking the app along with you, you can listen and or watch or both for free at any time. Go to the Salem News Channel app, which is free to download. Click Watch Live, and you can listen and or watch. And, of course, the podcast and the Harump Society. There's a lot cooking. In fact, yesterday, those of you who are harumpers, I went into the Russia collusion story again. I wasn't here yesterday. Mark Davis was. But my podcast yesterday was a summary of last week, and I continued with it at the Rump Society yesterday, and I want to again today, but let me go to Jonathan Turley yesterday on 3111 to kick this off. Here's a little more of what Turley said, released specifically coming from what's just been released from Ratliff over at CIA.
What was just released, in my view, undermined the testimony of people like John Brennan. But what Ratcliffe is talking about is exposing it all to show the public exactly what happened. This is the real Russian conspiracy. There wasn't a Russian collusion conspiracy, but there was a Russian conspiracy. It's when John Brennan went into Obama in 2016 and said, we just heard Hillary Clinton is going to come up with a Russian collusion claim to hit Trump in the election. And then months later, it was Brennan, according to these documents, who overruled his own staff to get this infamous dossier included in the intelligence assessment.
Yeah, the Russia collusion storyline is one of the most damaging frauds in American history. It's a fabricated tale designed to not only discredit a president-elect, but also undermine the very foundation of a democratic transition. Declassified documents revealing that Obama administration intelligence used Hillary Clinton's fictional dossier to create a hoax in 2016 and frame Donald Trump as some kind of Russian asset. And now analysis detailed how a planned December 9th of 2016 presidential daily briefing intended to affirm there was no evidence of cyber manipulation of election infrastructure or intended to alter results. That was sidelined. It was scuttled. And this allowed Obama's subsequent order for an intelligence community assessment to fuel unfounded conspiracy theories about Russian vote tampering, and the media went along with it. Legacy media outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and MSNBC, they didn't expose this deception. Instead, they just amplified it. They reported unverified claims from the Steele dossier and anonymous sources, even collecting Pulitzer Prizes for their journalism. This was not a lapse in judgment, ladies and gentlemen. It was tantamount to complicity in serious crimes, including falsifying intelligence, violating civil rights. Journalists who once prided themselves on being adversarial became stenographers for a partisan agenda, driving a story that divided a country and wasted millions on investigations and eroding public trust at the same time. And now that the revelations have emerged, like Tulsi Gabbard's disclosures confirming the origins of the plot, with referrals targeting officials like Brennan and Clapper for potential criminal acts, those same networks choose to bury that story, and they opt for silence instead of self-examination. Turley notes there that the media now engages in a full-court press to kill this story, while key figures secure very lucrative contracts from the cable news outlets, doubling down on their falsehoods. Caroline Levitt aptly pointed out that while these networks hyped the hoax, they now bury the explosive reversals. Even as Tulsi Gabbard's declassifications reveal these discrepancies, figures like Congressman Jim Himes dismissed them as apples and oranges, illustrating the ongoing effort to deflect and downplay. This stands in stark contrast to Watergate, where reporters uncovered abuses that led to a president's resignation. Now, had the press applied similar rigor to the Russiagate investigation, demanding evidence, interrogating motives, revealing the Clinton campaign's involvement, the Democrat Party would have faced undeniable scrutiny, leading to internal reform and genuine accountability from the media. That didn't happen. Instead, we saw a press corps that abandoned any pretense of fairness, becoming an extension of the Democrat Party. And the decline is symptomatic of journalism's broader struggle, battered by economic collapse, eroded trust, and technological upheaval. Traditional revenue has vanished as audiences flock online, leaving media in the dust. Massive layoffs, turning to media outlets online basically means public confidence has plummeted entirely. Bias and sensationalism have driven the public away from these traditional media outlets. That's led to clicks and partisan loyalty and, frankly, a lot of misinformation online because who can you trust anymore? Social media and algorithms now have democratized information, and that's a good thing, but it's shifted from any kind of truth-telling to marketing now. It's an inevitable evolution. Trump has frequently called for revoking the license of biased outlets like CBS, denouncing their fake news scum as a form of election interference. Their wrongdoing lies not only in what they fabricate, but also in what they omit. They provide in-kind contributions, essentially, to Democrats. And Trump's success in lawsuits against these media outlets has resulted in settlements which have made the left crazy. And it underscores the depth of the corruption. Legacy media owes the American public not just apologies, but a significant reckoning. Without accountability, they've endangered democracy as we know it, allowing a narrative to triumph over facts and leading to a weakened republic. And the time for excuses or deflection, it's long past. It's absolutely disgusting what the media's done. And I'm glad it's coming to light, and it will continue to come to light. And I think there's going to be more coming to light this week. There's a piece at the Washington Times, cabal behind the Russia hoax laid bare. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's stunning words that President Obama led a treasonous conspiracy to sabotage his incoming successor, Donald Trump, stand as the starkest event so far in the Democrat Party-inspired Russia hoax and its dark history. However, an analysis by the Washington Times shows that Ms. Gabbard's show-stopping press release, it contained one conclusion in her argument that Mr. Obama's political appointees snuffed out professional analysts' opinions. And that's critically important to understand. I talked with Larry O'Connor about this Friday heading into the weekend on his show over at townhall.com, and I'm on Facebook if you ever watch it live. It's fantastic. Larry asked me if I thought Barack Obama would be brought up on any kind of charges. And whether or not, and some people have said, you ought to watch Levin. Levin thinks that this falls outside of the scope of the presidency, and so presidential immunity. Friday, as Trump was heading to Scotland, I suppose Mark probably talked about this yesterday, the clip of Trump saying Obama should thank me for presidential immunity. I get what he means. He pushed the issue, and the Supreme Court ultimately. And in fact, it's funny, you'll notice, somebody mentioned this on social media, the president is no longer denying, and most of his advocates are no longer denying. They're just shouting presidential immunity. They don't even want to discuss his guilt or innocence. They just want to shout presidential immunity. It tells you everything you need to know. Not that he didn't do it, but that he's immune from being punished. Anyway, Levin opines that he's not protected, and that this falls outside of the bounds of the presidency, the collusion one. I don't know. I mean, if you're asking me, am I a betting man that Barack Obama is going to be punished? Fast Eddie, look, I don't want to build up this audience into thinking that Barack Obama is going to be dragged before Congress or dragged into a court of law. It ain't happening. He's not going to be treated like Donald Trump was treated. Agree with me or not?
I agree 110%, man. Unfortunately, no. Obama's not going to be perp walked. Obama's not going to be walked into a courtroom. Nope, nothing's going to happen to him.
So I don't want people thinking that's coming or can come. And I appreciate the zeal and the passion, and I hear the argument, and I understand why you feel that way. And on its face, on paper, I agree. It just ain't going to happen. It just won't happen. I do think it's very, very real that guys like John Brennan, James Comey, Clapper, Andrew McCabe over there at CNN, the lovers, as Trump calls them, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, I think those people are all ripe for the picking. They were all documented, well documented as part of the collusion, and many of them misled Congress and perjured themselves. There are going to be plenty of people to punish. Now, the question is, and I've been asking it at the Harump Society, when will Pam Bondi bring those charges? This is a difficult thing, and we're going to have to be patient. Patience is critically important here, because this can't be done with a snap of the fingers. These criminal referrals are only that. They're referrals. Pam Bondi's in the driver's seat. I know a lot of you, including me, have your misgivings. But it's going to take a minute or two. We'll continue to follow it and keep a sharp eye, both here and at the Harump Society. ChrisStigall.com. Back in a minute. Bill Maher, played him a little earlier. He's an interesting bird in that he's willing to be fair and honest that while he doesn't like Donald Trump even a little bit, the end of the world isn't here because he won an election. In fact, what the Democrats are selling, he's getting a little ticked off that the Democrats don't have a better, more cogent message. Of course, we just read for you earlier in the show that the Wall Street Journal shows the Democrats are at the worst polling they've ever had, ever. You've heard that by now. I mean, they are offering absolutely nothing. Jasmine Crockett is now saying she ought to be in leadership because she has a lot of social media followers. And I mean, if that's the case, then Sydney Sweeny ought to be president next. Can I get a harump? Nevertheless, Bill Maher, he's pretty ticked off with Democrats not offering much. 3107. Take a listen to this.
Your shot doing nothing, not engaging, has zero chance. Yeah. Mine, this guy, I'm telling you, I know this cat a lot better than I did before. He's a people person. He talks to people. You have to keep the lines open. The stupidest thing the left does, and this dinner is a perfect example of it, is having this attitude toward the right that we won't even break bread with you. Yeah. We are so far above you that we won't even sit down at the same table with you. Look, that is their attitude, and that makes me sick too. I'm glad I break bread, and by that what makes them hate the left so much. They think that they're deplorables. We're deplorables, and you won't even sit down to dinner with us. Well, good luck. See how far that gets you.
He's not wrong. He's begging the Democrat Party to talk to people like they're people and come down from their ivory tower elitism. That's what Bill Maher is begging the Democrats to do. They don't know how. Over at CNN, they continue to be stunned. The Democrats aren't doing better in things like foreign policy, for instance. 3108. Here's Harry Enton, the vaudevillian, with the polling. Ha-cha.
This one was a surprising one to me, given everything that's going on in Russia, what happened in Iran, what happened in Gaza. But the bottom line is Democrats in the American voters' minds cannot hack it. What are we talking about? Party trust more in foreign policy. Well, the GOP holds an average 6-point lead in the month of July. Look at this. Fox News came out last week, plus 3 points for Republicans on foreign policy over the Democrats. You think that number is not high enough for you? How about the Wall Street Journal? GOP plus 8 points when they match congressional Democrats up against congressional Republicans. The bottom line is this. Despite everything that's going on in the world right now, Republicans are more trusted on Democrats when it comes to foreign policy and the world at large.
How has this changed, or how does this compare to during the campaign?
Yeah, again, this to me was a surprising number since Donald Trump said he'd come in and broker all these peace deals. And while he's brokered some, he hasn't obviously brokered one between Ukraine and Russia and obviously the situation in Gaza. But take a look here. Trust more in foreign policy. You go back to 2024. Trump had a 6-point advantage over Kamala Harris. Again, look at the average right now. It hasn't moved despite everything that's going on in the world. You see Republicans plus 6 points here. And this goes back to a larger issue that we have discussed over and over again here in the mornings. Despite any misgivings that the American public might have about Donald Trump, when you match up Republicans against Democrats, Donald Trump against Democrats, still at this particular point, they are doing significantly better than you might expect. And when it comes to the issue of foreign policy, again, what you see is in the American voters' minds, Democrats simply put can't hack it. More voters trust Republicans on foreign policy, very much like they did back during the 2024 campaign.
Yeah, the adults are in charge. And a leader is back in charge. Hell, they're even excited about it. You know, he's over there in Scotland. He's playing around the golf, I think, as I speak. Then he's going to get on the plane and come home. They love him over in Scotland. The Scots were nuts for him. 3116. Some of his Scottish fans.
I'm really excited to catch a glimpse of the President of the United States. I think I really admire what he does for the US. He really is backing and standing up for his people and what's right for his country. So I only hope our Prime Minister could take a little bit of advice or inspiration from him.
And we're just super excited to get a glimpse of him today, and we'd be even more excited to get to meet him.
I've traveled to Scotland from Germany in order to record President Trump's motorcades. So far, I've been to Turnberry a few days ago, and now I'm here in Aberdeen.
Ever since there's been, the fake Russia hoax, the assassination attempt from last year, all the kangaroo court hearings.
Okay. That's amazing. Europeans traveling to see the guy in Scotland. Wow. All right. Steve Moore, our chief economist, who I am sure is just busting at the seams to come at you today with all the good news that's overflowing at the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, his hotline newsletter, the book, The Trump Economic Miracle. Steve-O, you want to talk about miracles? Trump is wielding a magic wand over there in Europe. The EU lady was talking tough a month ago, said there won't be any deal and he can just take a hike. And now all of a sudden she's shaking hands on 15%. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. And it really is a remarkable story. And as you know, I've been a skeptic of the Trump tariff talk. You know, I'm more of a traditional Milton Friedman free trade guy. But boy, Trump really is just one series after another of very good deals that, you know, I haven't read the fine print of these deals yet, but from everything that is being reported, these are going to lower the tariffs on American-made products, whether it's our cars, our dairy, our agricultural products, our technology products. Trump is leveling the playing field, which I think every American is for. And so I'm quite impressed. Now, again, it makes me a little nervous. I don't like tariffs too much because tariffs are taxes, but so far it appears that Trump is winning. Why should we be surprised?
If the items that we're talking about Europe selling to us, we were just talking a little earlier in the show, and this is the way it kind of I rationalize it in my mind. If we're making stuff here and they're making stuff there, and the market is a little more even, that's where I would see prices don't get out of whack because of the leveled competition, right? It's not like they have an exclusive corner on the market of something in Europe that we don't. It's sort of the point of it, right?
Well, I think you've said it well. And we've been, walking around with the kick me sign on us for, 25 years. And Trump is taking the kick me sign off. And obviously the other countries aren't happy about that they have to play by new rules. But these are rules that, in the end of the day, if Trump continues on this winning streak, is going to mean a better deal for American manufacturers and, as I said, our farmers and our technology companies and the stuff we make well. International trade is very important to the U.S. economy. It's important to, I've made the argument free trade is the greatest poverty reduction program in world history. But China and these other countries have abused the United States, and it is true. And so if you had told me, by the way, that he could get the Europeans to agree to a 15% tariff rate, I would have said you were smoking something. So he just keeps shocking me. And it is a brand new world, and it's a world that is putting America first. And obviously, a lot of these other foreign leaders don't like it. But you know what, Chris? That Trump understands the concept of leverage, that every country in the world needs to trade with the United States because we have the biggest consumer market. And so these countries may bitch about it, but guess what? They're coming to the table and they're making these deals.
And Steve-O, what I find equally fascinating is now he's using, and I would love to know if you're sitting in the room as an advisor to him today, when you're talking about Russia and they won't knock it off with Ukraine, and Trump says, I'm done with them, and now I'm just going to put the squeeze to everybody that does business with them, with Russia, and slap them with tariffs. I would just be curious, would you, because, he's got military people around him who study military action, and they're talking about foreign policy through the lens of military might. But this is Trump using another arrow in the quiver, the financial aspects of it. What would you advise him when you're talking about foreign policy and using tariffs to go at Russia?
Well, it's about time. I mean, listen, Russia is invaded Ukraine. You've got Putin's a bad guy, former KGB, and Trump is basically saying, we're going to bankrupt you if you don't start behaving, if you don't start coming to the peace table. And we have the capacity to do that. Listen, one of the things that I found so abhorrent about what Biden did when he was president was he basically said, okay, we're not going to produce any more energy because we're concerned about climate change. So we're just going to let the Russians and the Iranians and all these other countries take over the energy market. That was stupid, Chris. I mean, that just played into the hands of our enemies. Trump is saying exactly the opposite. He said, we're going to produce so much oil, we're going to put you Russians out of business. We'll drive that price down. And that strategy, look, am I going to make it against Donald Trump? No. It's hard to get the Russians to the bargaining table, but I think in the end of the day, they're going to have to do this. Now, one question, Chris, and I've said this many times on your show, we're really starting to understand who our friends are and our allies are and who aren't. Because the question is, will the Europeans and these other countries follow our lead with respect to Russia? I can't answer that question because sometimes I don't trust these foreign leaders. But same thing with China. We need to isolate China. I mean, look, Russia is just a company that has a lot of oil and stuff. They're kind of a third world country with oil. But, China is the real villain. And what Trump is trying to do is grand strategy. I want to make sure your listeners and viewers understand this, is to isolate President Xi and the communists, because these are bad people. They're like, Germany circa 1937. We want to make sure that they don't take over the world, and we want to make sure that the rest of the country follows our lead. And at the end of the day, I think they will.
When we heard news of a budget surplus in June, can you explain to me what that means and why that's significant, a budget surplus? Because I think, we know we're still almost $38 trillion in debt. Different than a budget surplus. Can you kind of explain that dynamic for folks?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good question, Chris, because, look, it's good news. And the most important news is that the budget deficit for the month of June is the lowest it's been, I think, in 15 years or something like that. Don't quote me exactly because I don't remember the number of years, but it's a good number. Now, remember the tax payments, because most people pay their taxes, in April and, earlier in the year. So you tend to get better numbers in June than you do, say, in November. So you have to compare June numbers with June numbers in the past, and those numbers are looking really good. And this confirms what I've been saying on your show and on Fox News, that if we can grow this economy faster, and Trump is doing that, guess what, Chris? If you get more businesses out there, if they're making more money, if people are working, if they're making bigger paychecks, guess what? They pay more taxes. And I've always said, as my buddy Arthur Laffer says, the best way to reduce the deficit is get America working again. And Trump is doing that.
So that's money back into the Treasury. Does that eat into the deficit?
That's my point.
Is that the same thing or not?
You traditionally have some months that have surpluses and some months that have big deficits. So we're still going to run I don't want to fool people here. We're still going to run a gigantic deficit this year. But what I'm saying is I think the deficit is going to come in lower rather than higher. And remember, all the people in the media and all your friends in the media, Chris, and all of the Democrats, oh my God, we're going to blow this hole in the deficit and it's going to be so much horror. Well, I'm not going to, look, this is a big problem. I think it's the biggest problem for our country right now is this enormous debt and deficits. What I'm telling you is Trump is improving the picture.
Okay.
It's still a deep hole.
How important is, and I was thinking of you Friday, well, I guess it was Thursday, because Friday we did the show and covered this extraordinary moment where Trump goes over to the Fed, puts on the hard hat with the Fed chair, and in my view, just embarrasses him, just pants him. I mean, what did you make of that whole scene? And I'll ask you again about the interest rate.
So, Donald Trump, I have to say that it reminded us, that the left portrays Donald Trump as sort of some kind of doting idiot. Trump is a great businessman, Chris. He really is a great businessman. And you know what he really knows a lot about? Construction. I mean, he was in the construction. So I was impressed by that. He went through every room and said, hey, why is this costing so much to do this or that? And he has credibility because he's done it. He's built, I've been in the big Trump Tower there on Fifth Avenue. It's a beautifully splendid building. And I like what he said, something to the effect that I think I'm quoting where he said, it's that when they say this is going to cost $3.1 billion, he said, I could probably do this for about $3 billion less than that, because he could do it. And look, these two don't like each other very much. The big thing is that the Fed is meeting, I believe, tomorrow, Chris, to decide whether to lower interest rates. I don't know if they will or won't, but Trump is going to get rid of him sometime. Well, his term is up in 8 months, but boy, this guy really knows how things work. And he
should it be lowered? If you had Jerome Powell's ear and he listened to you, would you tell him lower the rate?
What's the next question? I'm kind of on the fence out. No, really. I mean, here's my word. I think that people think all we have to do is just lower interest rates, everything's be wonderful. I don't want, when you lower interest rates, this is your economic lesson for the day, Chris. What happens? You're pushing more money into the economy. Now, Trump is a real estate guy, as I just said. He loves low interest rates. He's always, I love lower interest rates, don't you? And I said, well, sir, you don't want inflation. The one thing, we've got a beautiful picture on the economy right now. Things are going really well, Chris. The one thing that could upset that picture is if we see a resumption of inflation. So I want to see inflation extinguished before we start lowering rates. Now, I know that's not what the president probably wants to hear, and I know a lot of your readers are like, what's wrong with Steve Morris? But I just want to make sure that, because inflation kills us. I mean, if you go to the grocery store and things are still expensive. Now, Trump has brought that inflation down from 6% down to about 2.5%. I think there's still room to go. Yep. I know we got to come to an end here, and I want to just remind people, yesterday we unveiled our new website. Chris, I hope you'll go to it. It's called votewithyourfeet.net, votewithyourfeet.net, where we chronicle how many people are moving from one state to another. I know you're
check
there.
It out.
Yeah, you got to
check it out, Steve-O. I'm out of time. Votewithyourfeet.net. Thank you, my friend. Okay, before we move on, I wanted to say, I got a note yesterday, and I wanted to say a very happy 51st birthday. A young lady by the name of Kate. Kate told me, and I'll say his name because I was given his full name. Kate's husband, all right? His name is Dan. Dan Shapiro is his name. No relation to the diminutive pocket-sized governor of Pennsylvania, I assure you. Dan's a Midwesterner, as a matter of fact, and he's been listening to this show since I launched it, almost 20 years ago in Kansas City, 25 years ago. It's been a long time. Anyway, he's been listening from the very, very beginning. He continued to follow to Philadelphia. He's been listening to the podcast. He's now listening and watching on the Salem News Channel and great Salem affiliates all over the country. Dan Shapiro is turning 51 years of age. His wife, Kate, asked if I would say happy birthday today. So, Dan, thank you for 2 decades of supporting the show. Happy 51st birthday to you and your lovely wife, Kate. Look at that. She's waking up and thinking about you. So there you go. Happy birthday, Dan. Thanks for your support and listening to the show all these many, many years. Some more Trump getting excrement done. Speaking of Shapiro, that's his big, that's his his calling card out there in Pennsylvania. Get excrement done. Well, Trump's getting excrement done. Trump has a new civil commitment to Trump's policy for homelessness. Didn't cover this last week, and it's an interesting one. I don't know if he's going to get results with it or not. A lot of people are already challenging it legally, of course. Trump's new executive order to combat homelessness encourages local governments to revive civil commitment, a process to place people with mental health issues in treatment facilities without consent. Involuntary civil commitment has historically been used as a preventative method to confine people before they harm themselves or others, and most frequently affect vulnerable groups like LGBTQ plus people of color and people with disabilities, according to several studies, says Axios. So, supposedly vulnerable groups with disabilities or people of color will be harmed most if Trump encourages people through executive order to round up those who are, for instance, I told you last year, went to Seattle, not picking on you guys in Seattle because you can find this in every major city in the country. It just happens to be the story that I most recently had experience with. My 16-year-old daughter and I are walking through a heavily tourist area of Seattle. It's broad daylight. And my 16-year-old daughter, who's, she's 16, right? She's got the whole world figured out. And, I love her. She's sweet. But you know how teenagers are. They're not particularly, they don't think their parents are the coolest at 16. You remember. Walking through downtown Seattle, my little girl came back again and turned into like a toddler. And she gripped my hand as tightly as she did when she was a little girl, in sheer terror of what we were encountering on the streets of Seattle. In one instance, a man standing on the street corner, holding a knife, a literal knife, babbling and just swinging it randomly in the air in every direction. Now, are you telling me that person ought not be committed? You telling me that person can't be committed? Not to speak of the people literally shooting up in the alley, people peeing against the wall. I remember scenes once upon a time in cartoons or old television shows where the policeman is walking through, the evening streets of a town or a city, and there's a bum laying on a park bench, and he's covered in newspaper. And what's the cop do? Knocks the bench with the nightstick, wakes up the guy, says, "Hey, move along, move along." We're so far past that now. There are guys with knives swinging it on street corners, and cops just effectively don't do anything about it. So Trump, through executive action, is trying to get something done with it. And more trade deals coming today. The guy, again, while he's on the golf course in Scotland and opening up a new course, he's accomplished more in any given week than a lot of presidents do in their entire terms. It's incredible. We'll continue to cover it. Stay with me at chrisstigall.com and wherever you follow on social media, the Harumph Society podcasts, and we'll see you tomorrow right here. So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through. You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.